On the night everything changed, Nicholas stood on the small stage of an upscale restaurant in Chicago, singing to a room that had fallen completely silent. But it wasn't the applause that followed that stunned everyone. It was the reaction of a woman seated in the corner, Roberta Clark. The moment she heard Nicholas's voice, she collapsed. And in the chaotic seconds that followed, a secret buried for 14 years began to unravel. A secret his grandmother Eleanor had tried to keep hidden, and one that was about to change Nicholas's life forever. Before we begin today's story, if you believe that music is more than melody, that it is a bridge connecting lost hearts, if you believe that love, whether silent or belated, still holds the power to heal, then this story is for you. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to help us share these moving journeys where every voice and every glance carries a past and a new hope. Nicholas was a 14-year-old boy who grew up in a small apartment in the south side of Chicago. The only person who had cared for him since birth was Eleanor, a woman weathered by life, stern but warm, always knowing how to make him feel loved, no matter how hard life became. They didn't have much money, but Eleanor always made sure Nicholas never lacked affection. But there was one thing Eleanor always avoided talking about: Nicholas's parents. Every time he asked, she would gently but firmly say his mother had died when he was a baby and his father had vanished without a trace. Nicholas stopped asking, but inside him, that curiosity kept growing like a song left unfinished, never given an ending. Then one day, those unanswered questions were eclipsed by a greater fear. Eleanor fell ill. At first, it was just brief fatigue, but soon it turned into persistent heart pains that left her bedridden. The doctor said she needed urgent surgery, and the cost reached tens of thousands of dollars, a number far beyond what the two of them could afford. With no family left to turn to and unable to live alone, Nicholas was forced to move into a local orphanage while Eleanor was hospitalized. The cold building, the long, gloomy hallways, and the silent meals made him feel like he had vanished from the world. But what hurt Nicholas most was the fear of losing the only person who had ever called him son. And yet in that darkness, a spark of light appeared. Nicholas had a talent, the one thing he and Eleanor had always shared during their most precious moments: music. From a very young age, Nicholas possessed a warm, far-reaching voice, filled with emotion far beyond his years. Every time he sang, Eleanor would say, his voice reminded her of the old love songs she used to listen to with someone she never spoke of. Lying on his bunk bed at the orphanage, Nicholas thought of her raspy laugh of the late afternoons when they would eat canned noodles while listening to Frank Sinatra on the old radio. And then the idea came to him like a flash of lightning in a stormy night: I'll sing, not for fun, but to save her. And so began the secret nights. Nicholas would sneak out of the orphanage once everyone had gone to sleep, walk through the freezing streets, and find street corners where small crowds gathered to listen to street musicians. He sang with everything he had. Some nights he earned a few coins, some nights only sympathetic glances. But he didn't give up. One day, Nicholas overheard someone mention a well-known restaurant, downtown Vibrato Lounge, a place where local jazz artists often performed. It was a classy venue where only truly professional acts were allowed. But Nicholas didn't care about the rules. He knew one thing: if he could sing there, he might make enough to save his grandmother. That evening, rain poured relentlessly. Nicholas stood outside the restaurant, soaked to the bone, heart pounding. Through the glass doors, he saw couples dining, golden chandeliers casting warm light over sparkling glass tables. He swallowed hard, then pushed open the door. The man behind the bar, Jack Rivera, gave him a puzzled look. "I need a job," Nicholas said, voice trembling but eyes unwavering. "How old are you?" Jack asked, slightly skeptical. "This isn't a place for kids." Nicholas took a deep breath. "I can sing, and music doesn't care how old you are. Please, give me a chance." Jack studied him for a long moment. He had seen many desperate people show up at his door, but this boy's eyes were different. They carried something deeper than passion. They carried a reason. After a pause, Jack nodded. You've got one shot. But if you're not what you say you are, this will be your last." Nicholas nodded, gripping the cold microphone tightly. That night, he didn't just sing to impress. He sang to save the life of the woman who had given him everything. Jack Rivera, the owner of Vibrato Lounge, was not someone who was easily impressed. He had heard hundreds of singers perform there, from professionals to amateurs who thought themselves prodigies. But there was something in Nicholas's eyes that made him pause. A sense of urgency, a seriousness that didn't belong to a 14-year-old boy. Jack motioned for Nicholas to step onto the small stage in the corner of the room. No one paid attention to him. Guests were still chatting silverware, clinking wine glasses, chiming in the dimly lit space. Nicholas stood still for a few seconds. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and thought of Eleanor, thought of her thin hands, her gentle smile that had raised him. Then he began to sing, "Fly Me to the Moon," her favorite song. From the very first notes, the atmosphere began to shift. The spoons halted. Conversations paused. A few people turned to look at the boy standing on stage, holding a microphone nearly bigger than his hand. And then that voice, warm, soulful, and impossibly powerful for such a small teenager, washed over the room like a current sweeping everything along. Nicholas didn't sing like someone performing. He sang like he was telling a story. Every note was a prayer, every word a hope sent to the woman lying in the hospital. The entire audience sank into a strange stillness, as if time had stopped just to listen to that boy sing. When the song ended, there was a long pause, as though no one dared to break the sacred silence. Then came the applause, hesitant at first, then erupting. Some stood, others wiped away tears. Jack Rivera remained behind the bar, leaning on the counter, eyes locked on Nicholas. When the boy stepped down, Jack approached him, silent for a moment. Finally, he nodded. "You have real talent. I'll let you perform here, but on 2 conditions. 1, keep your grades up. 2, don't tell anyone you're working here." "Understood." Nicholas nodded immediately, his eyes shining with both belief and relief. "Thank you, sir. I promise I'll do my best." That night, Nicholas returned to the orphanage later than usual. He walked on tiptoes, quietly unlocking the back door. But what he didn't expect was someone waiting for him. Miss Beatrice, the orphanage's cook, a gray-haired, round woman with a kind smile. "Looks like someone has a secret," she whispered when she saw him sneaking into the kitchen. Nicholas froze, then lowered his head. I'm just trying to help my grandma. She needs surgery. I've been singing to earn money." Beatrice stayed silent for a moment, then nodded. "If you need to go out, I'll leave the door open. But only if you promise to keep up your studies." The boy nodded, eyes brimming with tears. From then on, every night after dinner, Beatrice would unlock the secret exit for Nicholas. She didn't tell anyone. She simply left a small piece of cake on the table for the little artist who needs his energy. The performances at Vibrato Lounge quickly became a highlight of the late evenings. Jack kept his word, never revealing Nicholas's identity to any staff. The boy was only called to the stage once guests were settled. The lights dimmed and no one cared anymore about the age of the one holding the microphone. Only the music remained. Each time he sang, Nicholas thought of Eleanor. The money he earned wasn't much, but he saved every night, believing it would eventually be enough. He wore worn-out shoes and an old shirt, ironed carefully by Beatrice, but not once did he lack hope. And then came a fateful night. A woman named Roberta Clark entered the restaurant. She was a successful businesswoman who had recently moved to Chicago after experiencing deep personal loss. Her face was stern, her demeanor calm, but her eyes betrayed an unspoken sorrow. Roberta sat in a secluded corner, ordered a glass of wine, and quietly scanned the room. When Nicholas stepped onto the stage, she barely noticed. A boy in a plain shirt with dark hair. Children usually sang as entertainment, she thought. But then the voice came. Roberta set her wine down. Something deep within her cracked open. That voice, the tone, the rhythm, the way he lingered on each word was eerily familiar. It was the voice of someone she had once loved, someone she had lost over 10 years ago. Andre, a singer, a dreamer, a man who had promised never to leave, and then disappeared without a trace. Roberta held her breath, her heart raced, the world around her blurred, leaving only sound and a flickering face in her memory. It couldn't be. But it was impossible to deny this boy had Andre's voice, and those eyes, far too similar. Nicholas had just reached the song's climax when Roberta felt the world spinning. Her vision dimmed, pain surged in her chest, and then everything went black. She collapsed into her chair. The entire dining room erupted into chaos. Nicholas hadn't even reached the final line of the song when a loud noise from the corner of the room made everyone turn their heads. Roberta Clark, the woman who had been silently captivated by his performance, collapsed onto the table, then fell off her chair as if all the life had suddenly drained from her body. Screams, the sound of breaking glass chairs, scraping chaos filled the dining room. Nicholas immediately jumped off the stage and ran toward her. He didn't know who she was, but something about her felt strangely familiar. He knelt beside her, holding her hand. "Ma'am, hang in there. Can you hear me?" Jack Rivera had already called an ambulance. The wait felt eternal. Roberta remained unconscious, her face seemingly pulled deep into some distant memory. Paramedics and police arrived, lifting her onto a stretcher. As they wheeled her out the door, Nicholas stood there, watching, heart pounding. "Is she going to be okay?" he asked Jack. Jack placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice calm and low. "She'll be fine. Looks like she fainted, maybe a minor heart episode. But you did good, Nicholas. Really good." But Nicholas didn't feel like he had done good. His heart was still filled with confusion. Who was that woman? And why had she looked at him as if she were seeing someone she knew? That night he couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, haunted by the image of the mysterious woman collapsing because of his voice. The next morning in a hospital across town, Roberta opened her eyes. White lights and the soft beeping of a heart monitor greeted her return to consciousness. Images from the night before rushed back like a flood. The restaurant, the stage, the boy, and that voice, so eerily like Andre's. She sat up, heart still pounding, not from dizziness, but from a question that wouldn't stop echoing in her mind. What did I just hear? Roberta couldn't sit still. As soon as she was discharged, she called a car and headed straight back to Vibrato Lounge. That evening she stood at the bar where Jack was checking receipts. "The boy who sang last night. I need to know who he is." Jack wasn't surprised. He had seen Roberta's face just before she fainted. It hadn't been the look of a typical audience member. "Why do you want to know?" he asked, cautious. Roberta took a deep breath. "I think I knew the boy's father. I once loved a man, Andre, and the voice I heard last night couldn't have been a coincidence." Jack didn't budge. He had promised to keep Nicholas's identity private, but he also saw the sincerity in the woman's eyes. At last he nodded. "I'll ask the boy. If he agrees, you can meet him tomorrow night." The next day, Jack pulled Nicholas aside backstage as the soft notes of a piano drifted through the air. "Someone wants to meet you," he said. "She says she knew your father. She's also the woman who fainted the other night." Nicholas froze for a moment. "My father." His heart clenched. Everything Eleanor had ever told him about his dad had always been vague. A part of him was afraid, but another part wanted to know. "I'll meet her." In a quiet corner of the restaurant, Roberta was waiting. When she saw Nicholas approach, she held her breath. Those eyes, that walk, and most of all, something in him that echoed Andre from years ago. "Hello, sweetheart," she said, her voice trembling. "Hello, ma'am," Nicholas replied cautiously. She hesitated, then began to speak. "Many years ago, I loved someone named Andre. He was a singer, had a voice just like yours. But then, he vanished from my life without a word." Nicholas was silent. "Eleanor only said my father was a musician, but she never gave me a name," he whispered. "No pictures, no letters, just an empty space." Roberta gently reached across the table. "Do you know anything else about him?" Only that he left. She said he abandoned me. No one could ever find him. Roberta's voice caught in her throat. Nicholas, I think Andre might be your father, not just because of the voice. You look so much like him. The boy sat quietly. Inside him a storm raged. If what she was saying was true, then Eleanor had hidden the most important truth from him all his life, and his father might still be alive. Nicholas looked up. I have to ask Grandma Eleanor. Roberta nodded, her expression softening. I don't want to pressure you, but if you want to find the truth, I'll go with you. That night, Nicholas couldn't close his eyes. His mind overflowed with unanswered questions. But the next morning, as the first light of dawn streamed through the hospital window where Eleanor lay, he knew it was time to face the past. That morning, Nicholas woke with a weight in his chest. He had made up his mind today he would go to the hospital and ask Grandma Eleanor the truth about his father. Roberta's words from the night before still echoed in his mind. The name Andre, the uncanny resemblance in voice, and the wistful look in her eyes when she saw him. Nicholas didn't know what he feared more, the truth itself, or the moment he'd have to confront the person who had hidden it from him all his life. He arrived at the hospital around noon, sunlight streaming through tall glass windows, casting patchy reflections on the cold white hallway. Inside the room, Eleanor was resting, her face even paler than the last time he visited. But when she saw Nicholas, she tried to smile through her exhaustion. You're here, my boy. Nicholas sat beside the bed, gently holding her hand. After a long pause, he finally spoke slowly but firmly. Grandma, I need to ask you something. Eleanor remained silent, her gaze dimmed slightly as if she had known this moment would one day come. About my father, Nicholas continued. His name was Andre, wasn't it? A heavy silence filled the room. Eleanor didn't deny it, nor did she confirm it with a nod. She simply closed her eyes, exhaled deeply, and whispered, I knew you'd ask me that someday. Nicholas tightened his grip around her fragile hand. Why didn't you ever tell me? Why keep that secret from me all these years? Eleanor opened her eyes. In them was a river of memories. Andre was a good man. A gifted musician. You inherited his voice. But back then, he got caught up in some complicated things. Dangerous people wanted to harm him. When your mother passed away, Andre thought the best way to protect you was to leave. Nicholas listened, emotions swelling beyond what he could put into words. All he could manage was a whisper, and you never said a word. Eleanor nodded, tears running down her cheeks. I was afraid. If you knew he left, you'd grow up filled with resentment. I didn't want you to carry the burden of unfinished dreams. I only wanted you to live in peace, knowing you were loved. Nicholas lowered his head. He wasn't angry, not exactly, but inside him was a vast emptiness, as if everything he'd ever believed had shifted. Did he ever try to come back for me? Nicholas asked. No, I never heard from him. I don't know if he's alive or dead. I didn't dare try to find him. Her hands trembled, but her eyes remained steady. All I know is, Andre loved you, even if he wasn't there, and I love you more than anything. Nicholas stayed there for a long time. They sat in silence, hand in hand, letting time pass to the rhythm of the heart monitor's steady beep. That afternoon, Nicholas met Roberta again. You were right, he said. His name was Andre. Roberta froze. The answer confirmed a haunting intuition she'd carried for years. I want to help you find him, she said softly. I don't know. Nicholas exhaled. I'm not sure I'm ready. Roberta placed a hand on his shoulder. That's okay, whenever you are, but if he's alive, you have a right to know. A few days later, Roberta began searching. She contacted an old acquaintance, Henry Wade, a private investigator who had worked for her company in the past. Help me find someone named Andre, she said. He's a singer, probably in his 40s by now, used to live in Chicago, might have changed his name. Henry agreed. It wasn't an easy case, but after days of combing through records and residence databases, A clue surfaced: a man living in a small town on the outskirts of the city, matching Andre's description, living under the radar for over a decade. Roberta called Nicholas the moment she had the lead. "Nicholas, I think I may have found him." Nicholas froze. It was the sentence he'd dreamed of hearing for years, and yet feared more than anything. "I want to meet him," he whispered. "Then let's go." The next morning they left the city, driving down winding roads that led into the suburbs. In the car, Nicholas said almost nothing. He stared out the window, his mind a vortex of thoughts. If this really was his father, what would happen? The house appeared behind a worn-out wooden fence, paint peeling from age. A modest place, nothing remarkable. Nicholas stepped out, his hand shaking. Roberta walked beside him in silence. He stood before the door, raised his hand and knocked lightly. A moment later the door creaked open. A man appeared, sunken cheeks, graying hair and eyes so familiar it hurt. They looked at each other. No words were spoken for a few seconds. Then the man stepped back slightly, his voice barely audible. "You look just like your mother." Nicholas swallowed hard, the first words out of his mouth. "Why did you leave?" Nicholas stood in front of the man who had opened the door, gray hair, a face marked by time, but those eyes. There was no mistaking them. This was Andre, his biological father, a man who until now had existed only as a name without form or memory. His voice caught as he looked up at him. "Why did you leave? Why didn't you come back?" Andre swallowed hard, stepping back as if struck by the question itself. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but when your mother died, I was being threatened by people I used to work with in the music industry. Dangerous people. I thought if I disappeared, you'd be safe, so you just vanished." Nicholas clenched his fists. "You left Grandma Eleanor to raise me alone. Let me grow up wondering about a father who never showed up." Andre bowed his head. He had no excuses, only regret etched into every crease on his face. "I was wrong," he said. "I thought I was protecting you, but I understand now. By leaving, I caused a wound far deeper than any danger I could have faced." Nicholas stood silently. The anger didn't explode, it simmered, burning like a hidden flame. He didn't know what he was hoping for, a sorry hug, or maybe just a chance to fill the emptiness. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he whispered, but I'm not going to run, not like you did." Andre nodded, eyes brimming with tears. "If you'll give me a chance, I'll wait, as long as it takes." From then on, Nicholas began to see Andre more often. They didn't talk much at first. They just sat together, listened to old songs, and sometimes Andre played piano while Nicholas sang. The silences between them were no longer awkward. They became spaces where broken pieces of the past began to mend. Meanwhile, Eleanor's condition worsened. Though they had nearly saved enough money, time wasn't on their side. The doctors said surgery was needed immediately, or it would be too late. Nicholas threw himself into performing, singing with all his soul, pouring everything into each night as if it were the last. Roberta was always there, seated in the front row, quietly watching. And Andre, from once a stranger, began stepping into the role of father, not with words, but by simply being there every evening. One night, after a performance so powerful it brought the entire room to its feet, a man approached the stage, a local music producer. "Kid," he said, voice full of emotion, "you've got something rare. I want to record an album with you. You reach people. That's something no one can teach." Nicholas froze, hands trembling as he accepted the business card. He looked out at the audience where Andre and Roberta stood, their eyes glowing with pride. He didn't say a word. He just nodded and smiled. The surgery took place that weekend. Nicholas waited outside the operating room the entire time, clutching the handkerchief Eleanor had once given him. Roberta sat beside him, holding his hand. Andre stood a little farther away, silently watching. When the doors finally opened, the doctor smiled gently. The surgery was a success. She just needs rest and recovery now. Nicholas burst into tears, unable to hold them back. Weeks later, Eleanor was able to sit up and speak. When Nicholas told her everything about Roberta, about Andre, about their reunion, she simply nodded, eyes misty. "I always believed you'd find your family," she said, her voice weak but steady. "But the most important thing is, you never lost yourself." One autumn evening at Vibrato Lounge, the hall was packed. It was a special night, Nicholas's first official performance after signing his recording deal. He stepped onto the stage, no longer the timid boy from months ago, but a young man who carried an entire journey in his voice. Before singing, he looked toward the front row, where Eleanor sat, her hair silver, but her eyes still bright. Next to her was Roberta, the woman who had believed in him before even knowing him, and Andre, his father, quietly rebuilding the bridge that had once collapsed. Nicholas closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he began to sing. That voice wasn't just music. It was gratitude, forgiveness, pain, and love woven into every lyric and note. When the song ended, the entire hall rose to its feet. Applause, cheers. But Nicholas didn't look at the crowd. He looked at the three people sitting side by side. Family. And for the first time in his life, he knew he was no longer alone. So the story of Nicholas comes to a close, a journey from a quiet restaurant stage to the hearts of strangers who became family. With his voice, he not only helped save his ailing grandmother, but awakened buried memories and reconnected a family thought to be lost forever. If this story moved you, if you too believe that a heartfelt song can change a destiny, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. It helps us continue sharing stories where music, family, and faith heal even the deepest wounds. And now, on screen, we're leaving you with two of our most beloved videos. Don't miss them. See you on the next journey.